Hi, I'm Bob Tabor with Developer University. For more of my training videos for beginners, please visit me at devview.com. In this final tutorial video, we're going to be discussing event-driven programming. Event-driven programming is really at the heart of most of Microsoft's presentation APIs, whether you're building web or Windows applications. And for that matter, it's at the heart of just about every other API in the .NET Framework class library. Events allow you, the developer, to plug in and respond by handling key moments or key events in the life cycle of an application's execution. So up to this point in our simple Windows console applications, there's really been only one event that occurs, the application startup event, which in turn triggers the sub main inside of our module 1, where we wrote the majority of our code in this course. However, in a modern user interface, whether it be a native Windows application or a web-based application, users can interact with various elements on a screen, whether it be buttons or text boxes. They can move their mouse cursor around and hover over elements. They can press keys on the keyboard. They can type text into text fields. They can drag and drop various elements around the user interface, and so on. And so a software developer will write code that responds to those interactions that they want to enable. So a given component, let's say a button, it might define an event. Let's say it's the click event for a given button, but it may have other events too, like hover over or drag over. But let's say we're only going to consider the click button event. The developer says, I want to write code that performs this business logic whenever somebody clicks on that button. And whenever that button's event, that click event is raised, then I want to handle that event, write code that will respond to that event. So the developer creates a method and attaches it or registers it with that event and says, hey, whenever you happen, let me know, because I'd love to run some code whenever that button gets clicked. All right. So as the application is running, the user interacts with the application. Eventually they click that button. The .NET Framework runtime raises the event and notifies any methods that were asked to be notified. And it would then execute that code as well that's attached to the event. And I'm going to show you how events are used in a very, very simple Windows application near the end of this lesson. But first I want to start with the absolute basics, and I'm going to create a timer example. And the great thing about a timer is that it has an elapsed event. So you give it how many milliseconds you want to run before it says, I finished elapsing, I finished elapsing, I finished elapsing. All right, so it'll keep doing that until you tell it to stop. And so what we're going to do is write code that'll say, whenever you finish elapsing, I want to know about it, because I'm going to write some code and we're going to do something interesting like write something to a console window. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here by creating a new project called Understanding Events. And inside of the sub main, what we'll do is start by creating a new system.timers.timer. And I'm going to call it, so dim timer as system.timers.timer. And I'm going to pass in how many milliseconds I want it to run between each elapsed event that it will raise. All right. So in this case, I want, let's see, new keyword. I want 1,000 milliseconds or 1 millisecond to elapse between each raised elapse event. Okay. So what we could actually do is simplify this, right, by hitting Control period and just simplify the name, selecting that option. Actually simplify. I could actually add an import statement, but hopefully you get the idea. Okay, let's continue on. Next, what I want to do is attach to the elapsed event or register a handler for the elapsed event. So here's what I'll do. We're going to go and use the add handler keyword. We use the name of the timer and then the event that we want to handle. So elapsed, comma, And then what I want to do is give it the address of a method in the computer's memory, okay? So methods have a spot in memory, and we want to say, hey, whenever the elapsed event happens, I want you to add a handler and then call out to that event in this address in the system's memory. So here we're going to just create something called module1 dot, and we'll give it a name. Let's just call elapsed 1, or tell you what, handle the timer 1. All right. And then I'm going to hit Control period on my keyboard, and one of the options is to generate a method called module1.handleTheTimer1. And notice that we created a method stub, a private sub, handleTheTimer1, and notice that it automatically creates the correct method signature for the event. So it's going to send two things to us. It's going to send the object that created the event, and then it will give us additional arguments that we can take a look at. And one of those arguments will be something that will actually print off the screen. Now, because it's generated code, it adds this throw new not implemented exception. Let's go ahead and get rid of that because we don't need it right now. Instead, let's do this. Let's go console.writeLine. And then inside of here, we will do handle the timer 1 event, and then I'm going to put in the hour, minute, second, and millisecond when the event was signaled, or when the event was raised. So we're going to use the signal time. All right. So the next thing we'll need to do, now that we've wired up our event to occur whenever the timer elapses after 1,000 milliseconds, now what we'll do is simply go timer.start, and we'll just keep running until somebody hits the console.read line and hits enter on the keyboard, and then we'll go timer.stop, and then we'll just exit out of the program. All right, so let's see how this works. Run the application. All right, and so you can see every second, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, we are hitting our handle the timer 1 event. Now what I can also do is wire up additional event handlers. In fact, I can have 2, 5, 10 different event handlers that say, hey, let me know too whenever you raise. All right, not just that guy, I want to know too. So you can add multiple event handlers for every single event. And to demonstrate this, let's just do this. Add handler timer.elapsed. And this time we'll go address of module1 dot handle the timer 2. I'll hit Control period on the keyboard to generate the method handle the timer 2, and it adds it right here. And I'll just copy what we did here, and I'll paste it here. Except I'm going to rename this so we can clearly see it, handle the timer 2. So let's run it, and now we're going to get every second we will get 2 entries. 52, 53, 54, 55, 56 for handle the timer 1 and 2. And we could keep adding additional handlers for the elapsed event of the timer if we wanted to. Now, what I can also do, which is kind of interesting, here, let me write this. Console.writeLine, whoops, writeLine, press enter to stop handling both, or stop raising, or stop, handling the event twice. All right, we'll just say that. And then here what I'll do is just go timer.start and console.readline and timer.stop. And then in between here what I'll do is do this. Instead of add handler, we'll remove, remove handler timer.elapsed. And this will do the exact opposite. This will say, hey, I have this method that we're currently calling whenever we hit the elapsed. I want to stop calling it. Just unregister it, and it's no longer going to be used as a handler for our elapsed event. So here, let's watch how this works. So I can press enter to stop handling the event twice, and right now I'm adding 2 entries every second. So I'll hit enter, and now we're back to only handling the event once. Okay. All right, so I say all of that to say this. I wanted to show you how to respond to events, how events work, and the various parts of an event. A object will declare and raise an event, and then we as developers can attach our code or add handlers to the various events that are raised by objects, and then write any custom code that we want to in response to those events. We can also say, no longer do I want my handler to handle that event. Instead, I just want to remove it so it's no longer listening for that event. All right. So events are central to every type of app that you'll build. I think I said that already. And to demonstrate this, what I want to do is build a really simple Hello World application using the Windows Presentation Foundation API to build Windows applications. So let's do this. I'm going to go File, New, Project, and we're just going to call this WPF Events. I'm going to select a WPF application. That's important, all right? And I'm going to call this WPF Events. All righty. And what I want to do, and I'm not really prepared to talk about WPF. There will be entire courses on Microsoft Virtual Academy that will explain what you need to know about it, but all I really want to do here is just drag and drop a button, and then drag and drop a label, or actually a text block. That would be better. Let's put a text block right below it. Okay. I'm going to select the button, and I might change its content and say, click me. All right. And then in the text block, I might change the text and remove it, just make it empty by default, but I want to rename it to my text block. And I'll rename the button as well to my button, something memorable. All right. All right. Now the next thing that I want to do is come over here to the properties window, and I want to make sure that I have the button selected on the design surface that I dragged and dropped from my toolbox. And here I'm going to select the little electric lightning bolts thingy over here on the right hand side, and this will show me all the available events for an object. In this case, make sure it says my button, type button, and then you'll see all of the events that this button can handle. You see, wow, there's a ton of events. Yeah, many of these you'll probably never ever need or use, but the one that you'll always use is the click event. So what I'm going to do is just inside of this little white area here, I'm going to double click. And when I do, notice that it adds a my button underscore click event. All right, and here I could write my label, or my text block, in fact, sorry, dot text equals hello world. And so let's run the application. And we're just going to click the click me button, and notice it says hello world. Now you might say, well, this wasn't very satisfying because I don't see anything similar to what we did previously. Where did it actually wire up the relationship between the button and the click event my button underscore click? Well, let's do this. I'm just going to go and select the form itself. So the entire window, all right, just the entire visual area. In fact, I'm going to make sure to select just outside of that, because if you select just the inner part, it'll be a grid that's used for layout purposes. I want to select just outside of it and make sure that the word window is visible. Then I want to go down to initialized, and I want to make sure to double click it so it creates this window initialized handler. And then what I'm going to do inside of there is go ahead and do add handler my button dot click comma address of, and then we're going to go main window dot, and we'll give it a name, handle the event one, just like we called it before. I'm going to hit control period on my keyboard and select generate the method handle the event one. All right, and we'll have to do something a little bit funky here, so just stick with me. Private shared, let's just call this result as string. All right, and then here I'm going to need to put set result equals string dot format, and then here we'll go happened at, and then HH minutes, seconds, and milliseconds, and we'll pass in date.now. All right, let's see if that works. And then what I'll do is show the result in here. All right, let's see if that works. All right, and you can see it works. Now, the first time you click it, nothing will happen, because the very first time you click it, the result will be an empty string, but then every subsequent time, the handle the event one will have fired second, and it will be populated with values, okay? Now what we could do is just make it happen one time, and then we could do something like this: remove handler, my button dot click, address of, module one, or I'm sorry, main window dot handle the event one. See if that'll work. It doesn't work. We'll have to put that someplace else. Maybe here after the very first time. There we go. That should work. So let's run it. And now the first time we click it, nothing happens. The second time we click it, nothing happens. But then every subsequent time, it does not change the date, or rather the time. Why? Because after we run through this block of code once, we've removed this handler, so it never updates the string result. Okay, so hopefully that's as clear as mud. There are some things there. Hopefully, I know that it probably didn't make a lot of sense with regards to dragging and dropping items and modifying them and using the properties window. But at a high level, just understand that everything in .NET is event driven, and so events are what move the action of the application forward. And here we were just handling an event that's wired up automatically for us through the beauty of the Visual Studio IDE, but we can take control of adding and removing events to, or event handlers to, specific events ourselves by using the add handler and remove handler keywords and pointing them to the address of methods that we implement in our source code. All right. So hopefully that's the one of the main takeaways. The main takeaway really is that events are everywhere you look, and that if you can dream up an action that you want your application to respond to, your first thought should be, what event should the application be responding to? What should I be handling as the developer? And then you do your research at MSDN, Microsoft.com to find the specific events for the given objects that you have in your web page or on your Windows form, and then you implement those using techniques that I demonstrated here. Okay. So that pretty much wraps up all of the instruction content. I'll have a couple of closing words in the next video, and then you'll be finished. So congratulations. We'll see you in that next video. Thank you.